I'm going to start with a quote from a book called Food Addiction by Kay Shepard. For some people, foods can be as addictive as alcohol. Gummy bears and marshmallow chicks can be vicious killers whose effects can lead to depression, irritability, and even suicide. The terrible truth is that for certain individuals, refined carbohydrates can trigger the addictive process. I was born in the winter of 1973 in the Bronx, the firstborn of my parents. My brother was born 2.5 years later. I was not close to my extended family as they chose not to have anything to do with my mom, therefore choosing not to have anything to do with me. My dad's parents moved to Florida shortly after I was born. I do not remember when my first memory was of my mom telling me she regretted getting married. But over the years, I regretted having children was added to it. These behaviors led me to feelings of rejection. November of 1980, we found out my dad's mother was dying of cancer. That same month, we had all gotten sick, but by Thanksgiving, my dad got really sick. My mom's father was a pharmacist and recognized the symptoms: diabetes. Dad went into the hospital, and we learned he was days away from slipping into a diabetic coma and dying. Thankfully, he did not. February 10th, 1981, as my mom and I were sitting on the kitchen floor, packing up goodie bags for my 8th birthday party, we got the call my grandmother passed away. I became so upset crying, I started hyperventilating. My mom called me foolish for the first time, stating how could I be so upset over someone I didn't even know. But I knew then things would never be the same. I just did not know how right I was. Things changed when they came home from the funeral in Florida. My dad changed, and I guess my mom did not know how to handle it, and they started fighting. I could not handle the stress of the fighting, so I ate as a comfort and as a distraction. But my mom also fed me, because that way she did not have to be bothered with something else in her life. As a result, I became overweight. See, up until then, I was always underweight and small for my size. Not anymore. However, no one noticed, and no one cared about what was happening to me. It wasn't until I no longer fit into my clothes that the abuse really started. While shopping for clothes, nothing in the girls' department fit, so I had to shop in the husky boys. And that's when my mom called me chunky and husky, words I would become very familiar with hearing for many more years to come. When I was 11, my mom took me to the doctor because of my weight. He put me on my very first diet. Mom just kept telling me what I could not eat because it would make me gain weight, but saying my brother could eat all he wanted because he was not the one who had the weight problem, and she would continue to buy those foods for him because, quote, why should he have to suffer because of me? I lost weight, but never got praised for it. No one really noticed I was getting thinner except me. After several months, I decided to stop the diet. My appetite was affected afterwards, and I did not eat much. All I got asked was, what's the matter with you? Why are you not eating? Why are you wasting money on food and not eating it? Looking back, I realized that was when I decided, why should I be thin and care about how I looked when my parents certainly did not? That same year, my father had an affair. My mom came to me one day with movie ticket stubs and receipts for both brand new cologne and men's clothes. She asked me if I thought that meant he was seeing somebody. I blamed my dad for destroying my family because I do not know how badly things had been between my parents. How did I handle these emotions? I ate. Because my weight started to go back up again, I began a new habit, sneaking food into my pockets and shoving them rapidly into my mouth alone in secret in my bedroom. The moment I tasted the sugary, prepackaged snacks, I got my relief, but it only lasts for moments. As I got heavier again, the comments from my mom got worse. You're getting chunky, you're getting hippie, your thighs are getting large, that outfit makes you look too fat. Do not wear your hair that way, as your face is too thin, making the rest of you fatter. 2 years later, I met a girl who had family problems like me, yet she was very confident. I thought I could learn a lot from her, and I did. I learned how to cuss, and I learned how to live in a fantasy world where I was married to whichever celebrity I had a crush on at the time, all the while dreaming of how this person could rescue me from the life I could not bear to keep living. This was ongoing for more than 2 decades, and it started me on a new behavior, shopping and spending money that I did not have. By this time, the only relationship I had with God was begging him to make things stop and to please grant me my wish. to marry that famous husband and let me escape. When that did not happen, I became angry with God. Why was he allowing all of this to keep happening? I truly believed I was not worth anything. My parents did not show me love. Neither did the rest of my family, who had chosen not to have any contact with me, and now not even God would grant me my deepest desire to escape my life. I would cry myself to sleep every night because I felt so unloved and unlovable. I asked repeatedly what was wrong with me, that no one, not even God, could love me. My first semester of college, I had to wake up earlier than I ever had before, and drive 45 minutes to get there. I was stressed, and for the first time, I found I could not really eat. Breakfast was 1 to 2 chocolate chip cookies, because it was the only thing I can get down without feeling sick to my stomach. Lunch was a sandwich. By dinner, I was still not able to eat much, and my mom would ask in an accusatory way, "What is the matter with you? Why aren't you eating?" She complained when I ate too much and complained when I didn't eat enough. I lost weight, but figured that meant I could now eat whatever I wanted. A college friend lived in the dorms and had a meal plan. She never ate lunch, so I got her lunch for free. Every day, Monday through Thursday, I ate turkey breast on a hard roll with a lot of mayonnaise. It was heaven to me. It was so good, I looked forward to it every day and did not grow tired of eating the same thing. I do not remember exactly when my need to please everyone and fix everyone really began. I know my role in the family was titled the glue, as I was the one holding them together. I realized this was not holding them together, but trying to fix them. By the time I entered the workforce, my codependency was in full swing, but I did not realize it. I thought I was being nice, kind, and helpful. I figured people would like me because I was nice. Boy, was I wrong. It started off they appreciated my help, but that just fueled me to keep going, and it would eventually get them annoyed with me and mad. I never understood why they just could not come and talk to me about their feelings. And so they just got mean towards me, and I would feel rejected yet again by someone I liked and thought I trusted. As my need to want to be like and fit in continued to grow, and since I was working and had a credit card, I started shopping for anything designer because the people I wanted to like me had designer handbags. I also got into a bad habit of contacting psychics because I kept hoping one of them would tell me exactly what I wanted to hear, that so-and-so, my celebrity crush du jour, was going to be my husband, and I was going to have all of this money, fame, and all my problems would magically be gone. Oh, and I'd also be able to show them. Them being everyone who never liked me or thought I was special or worth anything. Because if this famous person loved me enough to marry me, then I had to be worth something, right? I had to be special. October 16th, 2007, I had gotten one dream to come true. My family and I moved from New York to Southern California. Mind you, I wanted to move near Los Angeles because that's where the celebs lived, and I still had hopes of landing my famous husband. But my dad wanted to move near his sister, and my aunt lives in La Quinta, so I landed in the desert in a city called Indio. By this time, I was also in debt for almost $15,000, and I did not have a job to pay it off. I cashed out my 401k and was spending my savings to try and pay off that large balance. I truly believed I was going to be broke by the start of 2008. So of course that meant eating and contributing and continuing to sneak food so my mom could not say anything bad to me about my eating choices. And speaking of my move to California, I thought I was going to be able to reinvent myself and I would no longer have the problems I used to face because if it worked in the movies and books I read, well, then it'll work for me too. I did not realize I was the problem. So everything I thought I was escaping with, the way people treated me, followed me because I was the one who hadn't changed. When the problem started to get bad at my first job here in California, I turned to food yet again. I had gotten up to a size 16, the largest I had ever been, and my excuse was the way they made clothes was so much smaller that a 16 today was the same as a 14 when I graduated college. When I looked in the mirror, I never saw myself as overweight, but I do feel disgusted with what I saw. I had tried diets and they never worked. I wanted an overnight miracle and never wanted to do the work needed to get thin because of that vow I made myself when I was 11. The one that if no one cared about how I looked, why should I? While at the same time, I met a friend who started going to Destiny Church. One day she was in our boss's office with me talking about how wonderful this church was. She looked at me and told me they had a rabbi on staff. Well, now I just had to go check this one out because in my Jewish head, there's a rabbi and he never is at church. So I went to church that first day. It was March 10th, 2010, and Rabbi was out of town. My friend convinced me to come back the next week. I did and was introduced to him by Pastor Obed. As more people learned I was Jewish, the more excited they were to see me each Wednesday I showed up for church. I never had people who were really excited to see me, screaming up and down, jumping up and down when I entered the doors. Pastor Obed even knew me as, quote, the Jewish girl, before he learned my name, and always told me he was doubly blessed each time he shook my hand. It was the first time I felt like I belonged. And over the months, Rabbi Brian made a point to get to know me and educate me. He was the first person to ever really understand and get me. He taught me about Judaism and Christianity. He and his wife became my spiritual parents. And on July 7th, 2010, I accepted Jesus into my heart and the healing started. Still not knowing I was codependent, I dove into the church and volunteered. When I lost my job at the end of 2010, I was volunteering every day, and I realized I was serving in 5 ministries. My codependency was still in full swing, so I wanted to be there every day as much to help the staff and pastors as I could. I just convinced myself that by being there every day, I got to learn and grow from the pastors, and especially Rabbi Brian. The day I became his executive assistant was a dream come true, because he actually needed me to organize him in his day. For the first time, I felt needed. He needed my help the most with running the Friday night Messianic services. My mom passed away December 28th, 2011. She was clinically depressed and an anorexic who starved herself to death. One good thing was I was so upset that I could not eat, not even the sugary comfort foods I had grown to love. Shortly after her passing, my dad started attending Friday night Messianic services. He told me he saw the changes in me and he wanted them too. I was happy that I was having a positive effect on him. He met some friends, got saved, and eventually met a godly woman who became his wife in 2012. He moved to Arizona with her in August of 2013, and he got baptized the day after. It felt so great that I was the one who led my dad to getting saved and baptized, but at the same time I felt abandoned by him. That he chose his wife and his new family over me. One of my favorite scriptures has always been Psalm 37:4. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. By going to church, I always thought I was delighting myself in the Lord, but he still had not given me the desires of my heart. Well, not at this point he hadn't, but he certainly has now. I want to say things got easier after my mom passed and I started to heal, but I was upset. Why was I not able to save her? Why wasn't I enough to keep her wanting to live her life and to get better? I felt the ultimate rejection because I felt she did not love me enough to live. I missed her terribly and realized that I would feel less upset if I ate the comfort foods that she and I used to enjoy, all sugary and fattening foods. One time I even spent $35 in just shipping alone to have a specific food item that was only sold in New York mailed out to me in California so I could eat it and be happy, making sure I put them in the freezer to extend their shelf life. Every December, because of the anniversary of her passing, all I wanted to eat was pastries, pasta, pizza, all that good stuff. But deep down, I was not happy. I was disgusted with myself for turning to these foods I knew were bad for me just to make me feel better, but I just could not stop from eating them. July 31st, 2015, while watching an episode of Extreme Weight Loss, Chris Parrell was explaining to the crowd about his client, about her being a food addict, and that she was seeking affirmation from everyone around her. He mentioned that she had been abused and how she did not just turn to people but to food as well. It was as if he was describing me. I realized at that moment that I was a food addict and not just a carbaholic, as I would jokingly refer to my love for all things carbs. I posted my admittance on Facebook to start to be held accountable and made up my mind it was time to start attending Celebrate Recovery. August 7, 2015, I attended my first night and earned my newcomer's chip. The first time I walked through the doors, I felt embarrassed and was concerned with what those here would think. After all, I had been a volunteer for so long, I knew everyone on the worship team that night and many of the people who attended Celebrate Recovery. Once again, I was wrong. What I did not know was how badly I had been hurt or how that had been negatively impacting my life. I did not just learn about my addiction to food, but also how my need to be liked, my people-pleasing ways, and need to fix everyone was actually called codependency. I just thought codependency was living with an addict. I also learned the true meaning of love, friendship, and family. I went from having no friends to finding amazing friends and a forever family who loves and supports me for me. From holding on to feelings of resentment and bitterness to forgiving my parents and those who have hurt me, and from feelings of low self-worth to truly loving myself. Remember my favorite scripture, Psalm 37:4? Well, this is how God is granting me the desires of my heart. Many more continue to be granted to me. Attending Celebrate Recovery and working through the 12 steps in my Women's Steps study group has been the hardest decision I ever made, but has also been the most rewarding. There were 7 of us total in my group when we completed the study guides, which included the 2 loving and caring leaders. I loved laughing and crying with these women as we bonded. We became true sisters, sisters I can turn to whenever I need something. I was able to be vulnerable with this group of ladies and admit to things I had never admitted to anyone before. I believe this is called transparency. Through this group, I learned to take a good long look at myself, admit first to myself my role in my ongoing food issues, my codependency, and then admit it to others, thereby freeing myself of the strongholds I had been living with for so very long. Many people feel step 4, making a fearless moral inventory of ourselves, is the hardest part of the 12 steps. Even though I agree it was very hard, it was also a very huge turning point for me. Not only was I able to work through issues from my past, God helped me to remember the events that took place in my life and started me down the path to an addiction with food and codependency that I had struggled with for 35 years without knowing. At the start of my story, I stated the emotional abuse by my mother began shortly before I turned 8 years old. Well, it was by working on my inventory that God reminded me of those events that took place so that I could finally heal and move beyond the hurt. In addition to moving past the hurt of my past, by working the 12 steps and the 8 principles, I've been able to move past my issues with food. Food does not have power over me any longer. I have power over it. Along my journey towards what God had planned for me my whole life, I also learned some very important things. Number 1, I learned to finally forgive myself. Things may have started off being done to me that I had no control over, but there was a point in my life I made the decision to continue putting myself into situations where my codependency was alive and well, and choices I made when it came to what foods I ate, which kept me a prisoner to my food addiction. Second, I learned and truly know that I am worthy of love and being loved. So I do not have the need to seek it from other people. I seek it from a much higher power, and that's God. I know and believe how much He loves me. As a result, I stand taller, and I have more confidence. I have made my amends, and I have a better relationship with my dad. I've come a long way in my journey to healing. As 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, "The old life is gone, a new life has begun. I cannot wait to see what new things God blesses me with in my new life." I love serving as a leader in Celebrate Recovery. If this is your first time attending Celebrate Recovery, or you have not yet started attending a step study, I highly encourage you to do so. What I want you to know is simple. You are worth it. No matter what anyone has told you or made you feel, it's a lie. If you work the 12 steps and 8 principles, you will see a growth, a change, a healing. I believe in you. I know you can do this, so keep coming back. Thank you.